Hello everyone. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. I begin with the name of God, the Beneficent, the Merciful. My name is Dr. Amana Raquib, and I hail from Karachi, Pakistan. I'm an assistant professor at the Institute of Business Administration. It's a university here in Karachi, and I'm thankful to the organizers who have launched this course to have asked me to deliver a lecture in this series. I'll be talking to you on the topic of the Islamic philosophy of techno-social good. Let me introduce myself a little more. I completed my doctorate in 2014 from the University of Queensland in religious philosophy and ethics. My dissertation was titled Islamic Ethics of Technology, an Objectives Approach. The maqasid is the Arabic term. It has a history in the Islamic traditional theology and ethics. And ever since I've been working on technology and the ensuing ethics. In 2020, I, along with Dr. Junaid Qadir, received Facebook Research Ethics Grant and AI Research Initiative for the Asia Pacific for the project titled Culturally Informed Pro-Social AI Regulation and Persuasion Framework. As part of that grant, we did the first international conference on Islamic ethics and AI. It happened in Lahore, Pakistan, not in December 2012, but in December 2021, which was last year. You can find out about it and all the recorded videos and the sessions that took place on this website, the link for which you can see here on the screen. And in these various videos, you will see that there are different intellectuals who are talking about the various dimensions of the questions that ensue from the AI developments, and they're all speaking from the vantage point that is informed by Islamic metaphysics and ethics. Recently, a paper got published on this, the title of which was Islamic Virtue-Based Ethics for Artificial Intelligence, and the journal Discover AI. My book also got published in 2016 based on my PhD research. And interestingly, it is a growing interest in my book, especially with all the new research and development that's taking place in the field of AI. And then also because of a lot of uncertain potential that AI carries for the human future. I'll be talking about the Islamic normative framework. Now, before embarking on AI particularly, I would like to build upon some of the core ideas, concepts, or you might call the ethical foundations within the Islamic tradition, and that have stayed the same throughout the last 15 centuries. Although the manifestation and how they're acted out and lived out depend on the given circumstances, which might change. But these are the core foundations or ethical principles. Now, and those fundamental terms I'll be discussing because later on I'll be building my case on these. So the first term here that I'm going to talk about is ihsan, which is a set of three things. This is excellence, which is the spiritual moral excellence, and a constant striving for that. And it also entails virtue, or there's also this connotation of a virtuous living and, trying to inculcate as many virtues as possible and try to have a virtuous living. And then, especially with regards to a techno society in which we are living, there's this ingredient of techno moral wisdom, right? So, ihsan generally contains the idea of wisdom within it, because in order to act in a certain situation with the utmost excellence, you need the wisdom to know what is the most appropriate decision, judgment, or action in a given situation. So here in this case, having this wisdom of what would constitute an excellent living for a human society would be part of ihsan. Then there's this idea of human fitra, or which is translated as human nature, which is again a God-given nature. And that is also very fundamental, because some of the things that I'll be talking about in a while regarding, how, let's say, different AI applications um, interfere with our ability for compassion or empathy, and we need to understand what constitutes our nature or what makes us human. So within the Islamic system of belief, we are endowed with a God-given nature, and that has the potential for uh, living by or not living by ethical values. But at the same time, the fitra also has the capacity to not just know, understand, and love God, but also the the emotions, the sentiments that we have for other human beings, and so it's a sum total of our rational, as well as the faculty of emotions, and it has our instincts as well. So what we are given by God, and this concept of fitra is important because within the Islamic system, um, you can only have that genuine living if you are living in accordance to this God-given nature, both in the individual capacity as an individual, but also as a society, or as a collectivity. Fitra, or human nature, is important because the very idea of a good life within the Islamic system of belief and ethics is defined by what our human nature is. And in order to deem an act or a decision or a value to be ethical or unethical, we have to go back to what our nature is. So, and that nature is functions in a way that it has to it can only work properly if it's in the pure state. It's not distorted, and I'll talk about it later of how living in a world, in a social universe that's not in accordance with the human nature distorts the nature, and that can cause a number of consequences, including people losing their sanity in the extreme cases, and doing some outright unethical actions. So again, a lot of problems that we see in our societies today, I would say that partially they are explained by the fact that human nature does not find its fulfillment in the given dynamics of the society. The next key concept is mizan or balance, and that's also related to the earlier two concepts of ihsan and fitra. And mizan is the balance, right? So again, a balanced state where our when we talk about mizan or balance within the Islamic system, then it's the balance within the human soul. It's the balance within the social relationships. It's the balance between the humans and the non-human environment. So a complete state of balance that I'm talking about, and that balance, and that also requires understanding the human position and the human responsibility in maintaining the balance, the original balance that's there in nature, that's instituted by God. So again, one way that people are living at the level of social, moral, spiritual excellence or ihsan is that there would be a balanced state of affairs. Human relations wouldn't have discourse. There wouldn't be inner disharmony within the human self. There wouldn't be a lot of conflicts amongst human beings. So that's the state of balance, right? And if human nature does not find its fulfillment according to its constitution or the way it is designed by God, then it goes into disequilibrium or disbalance, and then that disbalance within then is manifested at many other levels on the outside. The other important idea that I'll be using is the objectives of the Islamic Sharia or the Islamic system. And the key objective is of the Islamic religion is to have collective good and welfare of human in accordance to the divine code or Sharia and in accordance to their essential nature, that is fitra. And the various laws and various principles that you would find within Islamic theology or Islamic ethics or Islamic jurisprudence, they are meant to ensure this. Now, before embarking on discussing the specific AI technology and its repercussions and consequences for human individuals and human societies, I would like to point out the fact that we need to discuss technology as such before we can talk about a particular technology. The reason being that we have to decide whether we are looking at, for that matter, at any technology as a means or as the ultimate end or objective, right? It is important to be clear on this, since if technology is a means to reach a certain conception of good life, then the standard of the good life should be meta-technological, and technological design and development should follow from there. There should be some meta prescription that would set the standard of the good life, and the technology and the design and development of any given technology should be subservient to that. If, on the other hand, technology acquires the status of an end, then the good life gets defined in terms of technological efficiency. And then there won't be a meta technological standard to gauge, to evaluate any given technology, because technology itself would become the standard. This is important, and I'll be using this later in my talk. Now, the next question that arises with regards to the modern technology is whether technology or technique itself is the telos or the purpose. Now, this is not just a practical or a social question, rather, this is a metaphysical question regarding, because if we have to decide what is a good life or what is the good life for a human being, then that requires us to first answer or first delve into the nature and purpose of human beings as such. So, technological practices are not just cultural practices, but rather they exhibit the way the world is meaningfully or meaninglessly created and shaped by humans. So they represent what human beings consider to be meaningful, what human beings consider to be the good in their collective lives as well as in their individual lives. So this question of telos or purpose is very important, of whether, and this is related to the earlier distinction that I talked about between the means and the end. So here again, whether there's some other purpose that can set the place of any technology, or is technology itself the purpose, right? As I said earlier, the end in itself. So again, we see that there are philosophers and sociologists of technology who talk about the technical code or script. So they say that the technological artifacts are understood as inscribed with meaning and value, which are the results of the negotiation process that occur in the design process and at this stage of implementation by users. Technologies are seen as containing a script that delegates specific responsibilities and actions to the users. If this is the case, then it's not something that's just there and people can use them according to their tastes and preferences. We know that it makes people behave and act in certain manners. So, for example, the possibility of checking out our various digital networking platforms for news updates or social messages. It encumbers both the sender and receiver of the messages because they start considering themselves responsible for checking and updating their messages very frequently. And if they don't do so, people would consider them as inconsiderate. So again, those are the expectations that are generated and the behavior that becomes the expected behavior and the norm because of that script that is there implicit in the technology. So that again makes us think that once they are being designed, you are not just designing a technology, you're actually designing and shaping the way people will be behaving in future once that technology is gets adopted. The whole societies adapt to that technology. And this takes us to the fact that there are, again, normative biases in any technology, right? So that, that's an extension of the script that we were talking about, that there are normative biases, right, of what would become acceptable, what would be considered good, right? So again, if you're talking about, checking out on the news, the more recent news every now and then, and responding to it. I mean, is it a good thing? But I mean, it depends on whether you are able to to have those frequent news updates or not. Right. So in a way, if that possibility is opened, then it becomes almost compulsory for people to have themselves updated on it every now and then. So in that sense, that technology, it creates an agenda of its own, and in Postman's words, it's a metaphor waiting to unfold. So again, those normative biases, again, it's not that somebody, sometimes it could be very deliberate, but even if it's not deliberate, you never create anything in a presuppositionless vacuum, right? So instead, they proceed out of our whole human experience, and they are directed by our ultimate commitments. So if you are creating something, for instance, somebody had a vision that everybody had their personal PCs or laptops or smartphones, for instance, then you're thinking, you're imagining a certain life for people and certain ways that their socialization would take place, certain ways things would function. So again, it's a new way of life that you are thinking when you are developing these things, and they have and that is why they have those far-reaching effects and impact. Another thing that we need to talk about, and we need to discuss when we are talking about technology, is the idea of progress. Because as we talked about earlier about the good life, then if we look at the modern understanding of a good life, most often than not, it cannot be decoupled from the idea of progress. Now, there's a difference between the early modern understanding and appraisal of this idea of progress with what we witness in this period, which we might call late modern or postmodern period. Now, the modern idea of progress was based on humanistic ideals, and there was this idea that there would be a betterment of human condition through the use of technology. Now, this is not tenable anymore after the crisis that's being witnessed in the 20th and 21st centuries, and crisis of all sorts, right? It's not just the technological warfare, but lots of other things like mental health disorder and other things that are impacted, the social harmony and so on and so forth. But then that idea of progress is seriously under attack, and now we are living in a world that's bereft of that vision of the humanist vision of progress. And the postmodern formula, according to it, the only constant is change, right? The change is there, you change for the sake of change, or rather innovation for the sake of innovation. You won't ask what this innovation, for that matter, is doing to human lives or societies, either for the better or towards worst. But you don't need that explanation or justification anymore, because now there's no fixed way of looking at human progress. So because of this very shifting understanding, within this milieu, we see that innovation becomes eventually a final good. And as I'll explain, that this is the key to understanding the many problems that we witness today. So because we are living in this age of radical plasticity, which is like a telos of no telos, this is a very relevant quote. It says, the pervasive materialism and violence of late modernity stems from its inability to embrace fully a world purged of any purpose and permanence, and therefore any resulting providential or progressive trajectories. The rapid development of various technologies merely amplifies the predicament. A postmodern telos of no telos offers modernity a way out of its dilemma. The radical plasticity of the postmodern orientation is attained because its telos is also its technique. The postmodern telos of no telos is in fact a telos of technique. So now that you don't have any metaphysical foundation to ground any permanent fixed kind of essence, so in that vacuum, in the gap that's created, you cannot live with that, and therefore technology was the most likely candidate to take over. So it becomes the final purpose or the ultimate purpose. So you don't have a pre-technological understanding of what the good life is, and then you would create certain technologies to serve that conception of good life. Instead, just excelling in technology becomes the good life. So this is kind of the gist of what this quote intends to say. And when you don't have well-defined ends, then there's an indifference to ends. So you are looking at workability, you are looking at efficiency, but not to certain ends or objectives. So development of technology becomes for the sake of technology, and then the technological means, because you don't have any goals or ends where you have to serve those ends, then the means would be indefinite, because usually the number of means are curtailed or ordered or informed by the number and the kinds of ends that they are meant to serve. But if there are no ends on which we have an ethical consensus, then this would become, a multiplication of means, ad infinitum. And the morality also becomes the morality of means rather than morality of ends. So you again would look at things like efficiency and convenience, which are means, which cannot be the final ends. And then you celebrate creativity and innovation without purpose, which is symptomatic of nihilism in a way. And it's not just the social purposes and goals that gets changed in the process, but then also eventually you will have to redefine human beings ontologically. And so technology serve human needs while also creating the needs that they serve. Human beings create technologies, and those then shape what it means to be human. So again, for instance, some of the technologies that allow us, the very technology that I'm using to communicating to people whom I don't even know who will be listening to this lecture, what would be the background of that person, and that person would perhaps might never get to see me and talk to me in person. And I believe, and I'm considering this to be a communication, right? So that would require me to rethink of ways of communicating between humans, which would in turn means, what we consider human interaction to be. So again, it has those ontological redefinitions that take place. And then the ontological question also pertains to defining human beings as to whether we are the fabricating beings, right? Is that our defining quality or feature if we are homo faber, right? So do we constantly fabricate ourselves, or do we define ourselves as spiritual, moral, social selves? I mean, as I talked about earlier, that within the Islamic schema, human beings are spiritual, moral, social beings. The next thing that I'll be talking about is the axiological side of technology, right? So technologies developing within a specific cultural context embody a specific set of meanings, functions, value, and vision for the society. These may prevent certain other values from becoming functional or operational, right? So they would encourage certain values and they would discourage the others. So the questions that we need to ask is, does good life need to be technological? I mean, is that the prescription for good life? And is self-realization equivalent to technological consumption? Is collective human prosperity and well-being equals technological consumption? So problems could only be the ones that can be solved via technology now, right? Again, so the very way we define and understand problem also becomes is now also understood through technology, right? So only those things are to be considered problems that could have technological solutions, and then that becomes the focal point, right? I'll be talking about. I've given here the example of driverless cars, and I'll be talking about it in a while. Now, regarding technology and reality, so technology changes the social understandings and practices. So, for instance, sonography of human fetus changes social understanding, and along with it, the medical practices with respect to expecting mothers and developing fetuses. Infertility before the advent of IVF was not considered a disease, but a social situation of not having children. Now it's a medical condition that requires a techno fix. The instrumentalist worldview is invading our spirit and influencing the way we teach and learn and manage our social institutions. A calculus of averages and probabilities is replacing ends and the common good. The technological order is reconstituting the moral order in terms of technique. If we contrast the postmodern reality with the Islamic reality, what's the salient points that we see? Now, postmodernism is modernism stripped of teleology. The modernist faith in progress has been undermined in the postmodern world. Yet, the drive to innovate that fired the engines of progress has been intensified and accelerated. Innovation now constitutes an end in itself, unencumbered with the baggage of final purposes, ultimate goals, or cosmic designs for mankind. Now, contrastingly, in Islamic reality, the human self and values both have absolute dimensions. Self and meaning cannot be indefinitely constructed and reconstructed. The idea of human nature of fitra is central, which is fixed, which is permanent, which is essential. The social ethical values are inferred from the scriptures, which is the Quran and the sayings of the Prophet Muhammad, which is called the Sunnah, and they are also the fixed sources. And then there's a demarcation between substantive and instrumental good. And instrumental good only becomes instrumental, and technology would come under the umbrella of instrumental good if it serves those substantive good that are to be derived from the Islamic scriptures. Now, within the Islamic ethical paradigm, the purpose or objective is to perfect the human character in accordance with their God-given nature and this process is called tazkiyah, which is the highest goal and highest achievement for a human being. This is the unwavering standard against which all techno-social development is to be judged or measured. Rationale of material and technological development is the uplifting of human soul or moral progress so they can actualize their humanness in terms of reaching the heights of moral spiritual excellence or ihsan. In this context, the greatest misery, according to the Quran, is not knowing their true nature and reality of the soul. The greatest transgression or zulm in the Islamic cosmology is the oppression directed to one's own self. So, keeping in mind the above cosmology, there are complete sets of responsibilities that allow a Muslim the character making by the cultivation of virtues, whereby fulfilling their responsibilities toward God, toward other human beings, such as their family, including their parents, cows, children, grandchildren, siblings, uncles, aunts, neighbors, community members, oppressed individuals, weak and needy individuals, and so on. And the natural environment like air, water, soil, plants, animals, and so on. Here, in the Islamic paradigm, efficiency is not defined value or arbiter. There could be less efficiency if it results in more piety and virtue, unlike the technologic, where the content of the choices made under the rule of efficiency is less important, whereas the rule of efficiency is more important. So we see this contrast here. Now, if we talk about the Islamic techno-ethics, kind of following up on the essential concepts that we just looked at. So within the Islamic paradigm, spiritual moral contemplation, which is called tafakkur, and teleological thinking, which is called tadabbur, it leads to self-awareness and God consciousness, both of which are related. In the Islamic social universe, any technology requires a meta-technological principle for its purpose and validation. No technology is self-justificatory. Practical moral reasoning in the light of objectives of Sharia overrides the technological rationale. Each human activity, technological and non-technological, should contribute to this directly or indirectly. So in that regard, technology is not essentially different from other human activities because they all are guided and steered by those overriding objectives. There are 4 C's, which are compassion, community building, care, and cooperation, that undergird all of the social practices in Islam. Now, when we talk about the objectives in Islam, the ones that I talked about, so there's this greater goal, which is self-purification and God consciousness, as you can see at the top. And then there are those 5 objectives. And as you can see, these are the objectives of religion, life, intellect, property, and lineage. But then, as you can see, under each category, there are further subsets, right? So if we are talking about intellect, then it should have, the goal is to have, to facilitate intellect, to foster intellect and thinking, and thereby, the creativity, innovation, and novelty that's part of human nature or human fitra. Then there's also this objective of respecting the environment, or making an effort towards sustainable living, right? So again, these all have to be balanced. There has to be a mizan that should balance all of that. So again, if we are having a technology that harms any of these objectives, such as those of justice, or such as that of human dignity, or kinship, or it in any way causes tyranny, then or hampers sustainability, then it has to be seen that it's not conducive and it's not aligned to these Islamic objectives, right? So we have to place it within each of these categories and then assess it. So these are those fundamental or foundational objectives. Again, there's a consensus on these 5 objectives. The detailed objectives that you can see here, they are my rendition or my understanding. That's a proposal to see that how in a contemporary technological world we can understand and then apply these 5 classical objectives. So now, finally, now that we have understood technology as an enterprise, modern technology, and then also the Islamic ethics, I'll look at the AI through the lens of Islamic techno-social good. So the main points are that it's the human beings who need to strive to rise above their biases in the quest for living by truth and justice. Virtuous human societies do not just need efficient, unbiased, for instance, court trials. Virtuous human societies, more than anything else, need better human beings in pursuit of and exhibiting higher moral ideals. Having a community of virtuous individuals would make the need for many AI applications, especially those that are aimed to substitute human services, redundant. In order to improve morally, there will be strong social bond, mutual cooperation, and compassion within the communities. So most of the people, they would need, a smart machine to take care of them when they're sick, because the community bonds are lacking in the first place. So again, there are non-technological fixes, and which, as I mentioned earlier, are more in harmony with how human nature has been designed by God. Again, norms and virtues. So virtues usually we associate to individuals, whereas norms are more societal. So the Islamic normative framework allows an evaluation, arbitration, and determination of a set of collective values that are objective. The individual virtues grow in directions that foster those values. The virtues, once firmly instilled, allow techno-moral choices to be made as individuals, as individual users, and as collective units of designers, developers, academics, and policymakers. Without the normative framework of values that acts as a regulatory framework, the virtues remain too individual to be able to consciously contribute toward the creation of right AI policies for creating harmonious societies globally. We are in dire need of intra and interharmonious communities globally working toward common good and well-being while benefiting from their cultural particularities. What would be the ethical objectives or the techno-moral objectives from Islamic perspective? So the techno-moral virtues required for techno-moral wisdom can be appropriated from within the maqasid objectives framework. The ethical values in the form of Islamic objectives help in the virtuous character making of the societal members. These virtues then enable them to build a techno-moral society as they live by those values and integrate those in their individual and collective choices. The Islamic objectives of the Sharia and the general virtues, they overlap in this proposed scheme, with the techno-moral virtues becoming a subset of both. The kind of subjectivity to be formed through this process would allow the subjects to exercise enhanced moral practical reasoning. So the virtues inform their moral decisions, and not only in the capacity of users, but also in the capacity of designers and engineers. So they can sort of foresee, have this foresight of what kind of society, the kind of technology they are developing would create, and whether they want that sort of a society or not. So Islamic virtue come objectives-based system, in that ethics is given a central stage in the individual's private life, whereby an individual's ethical choices shape the society they live in. In return, the society shapes the individual's ethical choices. So there's a constant overlap and back and forth movement. This continuous feedback mechanism ensures that the private individual is intimately tied to the social, whereby the individual becomes the social. Now, here is this one case of automated vehicles and accidents viewed through the Islamic normative system that we have been discussing. So we do not know with certainty if self-driven cars will cause less or more accidents. Now, even if hypothetically they minimize accidents, now the ethical goal here does not only pertain to minimizing the accidents. The greater goal is to inculcate responsibility and empathy, which is virtue, in the drivers and the whole system. And this is the social moral good for the healthy functioning of any society. So if we do not morally train these drivers, then the automated cars might prevent road accident and the accidental deaths that take place, but not the deaths or the harm that these same individuals cause due to their intemperance or rage. So they might not get the chance to show that rage on the roads, but this would happen elsewhere. So the question would be, if in the capacity of a son or a husband, they actually harm someone, then should that also be replaced by automated system or a smart machine? Those relationships, should they be taken over as well? Then we'll have to go back and revisit the idea of human nature. So they're not really value neutral. Any technology, including AI, prioritizes some values over others, such as efficiency, over the self-reflection or self-control, right? As we saw in the example. Now, the questions that arise is, can machines taking care of sentient beings be socially beneficial? So what kind of a prior socioeconomic moral landscape would lead to the need for this kind of automated care? So not only asking the consequences this would have, but also why would you need such a caring bot in the first place? In what ways this in turn would affect the development of virtues on an individual level and human well-being on a collective scale? How can we determine whether human or mechanical care is superior, since this would depend on the virtues and values we prioritize, informed by our understanding of human well-being aligned with human nature? There's also this conflict of control versus character. So AI comes with the promise of increasing efficiency and unprecedentedly increasing our human control. This has also resulted in AI applications detaching the humane component from human societies. So why does one need to have control? And to what extent are human beings supposed to wield such control over their lives? Experiencing losses, bearing pain and suffering, having time alone for introspection are all part of our human condition that aid us in moral development, growth, and character building. If we depute valuable virtue-instilling tasks to intelligent machines, then this marks the dichotomy between ease via efficiency and character making via difficulties and challenges. Again, there's this question or dilemma of moral agency, because if we compare human beings with the smart machines, then let's say this automated diagnosis, it makes the process more efficient. That is, diseases are diagnosed more quickly. However, in a scenario where a certain diagnosis goes wrong and an individual's life is put at risk, then this risk causes harm to the objective of life, and which is the central objective in the Islamic jurisprudence and Islamic ethics. Now, the question would be, who bears the moral responsibility in this case? Doctors are bound to be morally accountable to themselves and to the society for their negligence, unlike robots. Likewise, if automated vehicles cause an accident, they cannot experience remorse or guilt or the sense of responsibility toward the accident, since they are not sentient. If human soldiers fight in a battle, they can be heroes if they treat the populace with dignity, or they could be villains if they commit massacres and atrocities. But can robot soldiers be heroes or villains? That's the question. So the conclusion is that I aimed to provide a virtue theory grounded in a foundational yet broad normative framework of the Islamic objectives, rationally derived from an inductive reading of the Islamic scriptural sources, Quran and the Sunnah. When we conceptualize virtue-based ethics within the Islamic tradition, we mean an ethical framework to settle the hierarchy of values within the social realm that is then concretized by a societal mechanism of inculcating virtues within individuals, resulting in virtuous collectivities, who can then uphold Islamic ethical objectives in their individual and collective lives. What exactly are the values that AI technology needs to seek in the social realm that the designers, developers, engineers, policymakers, and users can then translate into actions through their virtuous dispositions? The cultivation of virtues agreed upon by the major religious and secular ethical traditions could be integrated within the broad umbrella of the Islamic objectives, specifically under the religious objective of tazkiyah, which is self-purification or self-actualization. Thank you very much. And I hope that this course was fruitful and many people are able to benefit from it. Thank you very much.